What's up, everyone? Sam, Steven, Dan, what's up? Eric, Tommy. Hopefully everybody had a good Christmas holiday, had a good weekend. Hopefully you didn't have to go to work today. You know, some people got that off. Hopefully you're one of the lucky few. Amanda. Oh, I'm still freaking well, I'm over COVID, but still not 100%. My ass is getting kicked at the gym, but thank God I can go back. I can actually go to the gym now. That's a blessing. God. I just came in from the barn and getting shit done. Look like a freaking bum. You guys will just have to deal with it. Sam, William, how's it going? Kirby, what's up, brother? What's up, Rob? This is gonna be a good one, man. This is gonna be a good one. A lot of you guys asking for this one, and Rick's put together a pretty good series for for all you guys and gals. So today's first one, switching from carburetor to EFI. So I think he did a good job on how he's laying all these out. Kind of a good progression from the beginning to the end process. Everybody do me a favor, if you're on Facebook, share this thing. Let's get as many people on here as we can. Sorry, stupid COVID's going around, man. E's and B's, what's up, brother? How you doing? Craig, JMJ, how's it going? Brian, you and me both, man. Hey, listen, kind of side benefit for your boy. I get to learn a lot of stuff this winter right along with you guys and gals. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Keith, what's up, brother? Merry Christmas. So let's see. Yeah, I think we got a good enough little group on here. I know you guys will keep piling on here, so we'll just get right to it. Thanks, Jazz. Appreciate that. Everybody, I appreciate all you guys and gals for sharing. It helps us out. And so without thanks Denise. Yeah, feeling a lot better than last time, but still not 100%. Thanks, William. You know, that was my very first time ever trying to do an art piece. You know, I can do simpler stuff, but I want to try that out, and I gotta get some more tools. You know, it's always something, man. Not that I'm not a tool junkie. I'm completely and totally aware of how it works, but yeah, I gotta buy a bunch more tools now. Darn it. I appreciate it, man. That's what we're going to learn today. Terminator X has 2-step. So we'll let's bring Rick on and
hello.
You know, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, pretty good. Sick of the being dark at 5:30 and track's not being open and snow.
Yeah, you and me both, man. I mean, I don't mind the dark at 5. The track part, though.
Nothing.
Good old Ohio, though. What do you do, right?
Oh boy. So
why don't we kind of start at the beginning for everybody who's not familiar with who you are and what you do and where you're from, and just kind of give everybody your backstory real quick. Introduce yourself and tell them about Big 3 and what you do.
Well, my name's Rick Trunkett, if you guys don't know me. I'm part owner of Big 3 Racing in Hinckley, which is just south of Cleveland. So we're up here by Dragway 42. We've been around since 2007, so we've been doing a minute. I got into, I guess, EFI, just like a lot of the carb guys did too, is out of necessity. I used to run carburetors and kind of got over it. And back in 2012 is when I got hooked up with Holley to be one of their platinum dealers, tuners, whatever you want to call it. Did all their training and built up a pretty good relationship with Holley and started working pretty close with them on stuff. To the point now that we do roughly. I doubt you guys care about my sales, but we sell roughly about 400,000 a year in EFI and Holley product. So, and I probably tune a couple hundred cars a year. I would think, either remotely or in our shop. We do have a 10,000 square foot shop. We have 2 chassis dynos, an in-ground 2-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive, both Mustang dynos. I've been kind of going back and forth whether when to invest in a hub dyno, if anybody actually needs it. We actually make enough power to use it.
In a couple of weeks, we'll have Dynacom on. Maybe you should come on and talk to them about their badass hub dynos.
Yeah, I'm not going to do anything unless it's a 6,000 or 7,000 horsepower one. So,
yeah.
But I mean, so far we've done over 2,000 wheel on our dyno with no issues. So that's me in a nutshell. I guess full disclosure, whatever. I don't think I know everything. I don't think I'm the end all be all. There's a tuners seem to have like an arrogance about them that nothing's ever their fault. It's always you. I'm just like everybody else, man. I just want to go fast and have fun. And I really actually just enjoy helping people. So I charge just enough for remote tune so my wife doesn't get mad at me for being on my computer at all hours. So
so are you a Mopar guy?
I
Do you
am.
have a Mopar following?
Blue. I bleed Mopar blue. I'm not ashamed of it. I'll debate anybody on a Gen 3 heavy versus an LS all day.
No, listen. There's a bunch of Mopar guys in there commenting, and typically Mopar guys don't speak up on here. Not to. I'm blessed that I was raised as a Chevy fanatic because cheapest platform. Ford guys, if you're sticking to a Ford platform in a Ford car, it's always pretty much twice as much. New Coyote stuff isn't quite that way. I think the aftermarket's finally got their head out of their ass. But you poor Mopar guys.
When you build an expensive,
pay for it.
It doesn't matter. Like if you build a very high-end LS, you build a very high-end big block Chevy, a very high-end big block Hemi, like it's expensive. It's just if you want to go super cheap on factory parts, I guess the Chevys like might be the way to go. But again, like F-150 Coyotes and we've been pushing some Gen 3 Hemi stuff to the limits. I don't see much of a difference in price. Like when you're in the mid-range, you don't have as much part availability, or you don't have all the, like, I guess, choices, when it comes to what parts you're going to use. But I don't know. I think they're all pieces of shit, right? So,
they all break down way before you want them to, don't they?
Yep. No matter what, we need to film with a bunch of Chinese parts to make them work.
Yeah.
But I actually drag race a small block Chrysler, like a 340 based old school. I've had my car for 22 years. This is my first car I bought when I was 15 and a half. I sold my moped to buy it. So I pretty much just beat my head up against the wall with that thing, with being 3,800 pounds and torsion bars and leaf springs. But I'm just stubborn.
Is HD Maury your number one hated Ford customer?
No. I love HD.
Yeah. HD's a good dude. He's an HD. You're an acquired taste.
He's high strung. He is high strung.
There's no doubt, but you're a good dude.
Yep.
So apparently a lot of people in here know you already, so that's a good thing. So I'll kind of just fade into the background, and I'll pop any questions that anybody has along the way, and kind of let you do your thing, because I'm not an expert on converting carb to EFI and the benefits and all that stuff. So I will defer to you, sir.
Absolutely. So I guess like the first thing we need to talk about is why? Like, why would you want to go EFI? There's a lot of hardcore stuck carburetor guys out there, and I think what if it EFI obviously stands for electronic fuel injection, but if you just get that term out of your head and think of it as just an engine controller, um, it might be a little bit easier to swallow because I went through it. I did a quick summit cart here of what most carburetor guys go through. Let's see if this is working. You guys see my
I don't.
screen?
You got to share it to me.
Here we go. You guys see my summit cart now?
Yep, there you go.
All right. So I did a quick thing. So the general progression of a carburetor is I go out, I got my $1,000 to $1,500 carburetor. More basic combos could usually get away with a $800, $700 carburetor. Usually, if you're buying a carburetor off the shelf at Summit and bolting on your car, you're not doing good enough. But we want to start controlling the ignition and power management. So we buy a grid for our already expensive ignition box, an HVC 2 coil. For a nitrous, we might buy a nitrous controller. And then if we want to really start data logging, things like RPM, coolant temp, oil pressure, air fuel ratio, just the basics, we're going to go out and at least buy a Race Pack Sportsman. So right there, we got $2,300 in stuff. Okay. And a lot of guys live and die by this. But the one thing that you don't get when you have 3 different boxes is now you have 3 different softwares and none of them are talking to each other. The grid controls your ignition really well. The nitrous controls your nitrous really well. And your race pack tells you what's going on. So at the end of the day, the timing does what it does. If the nitrous, for some reason, your controller doesn't communicate with the grid for whatever reason to pull the timing when it's supposed to, the race pack shows you blowing up your engine, right? So let me unscreen share this. We have $2,300, 3 different programs. One might not really necessarily work happily with your laptop or whatever the situation might be. There's a ton of guys that I get over to just an EFI system that still run a carburetor because the fuel injections, like this part of it, like it's like the most simplest, easiest. You pretty much set your fuel curve like you would on a carburetor would have it set, and that's it. The rest of it's going to be power management, data logging, and then trying to set up safeties in the backgrounds to not necessarily, it's not going to stop you from blowing your shit up, but we're going to try to prevent as much damage as possible. It's easier to burn a piston sometimes than it is to launch a rod out the side, right? So being able to have some software or one program or one system talk to each other and fail safes and checks and balances in between all of them, to me is why I would make the jump from it. Most guys with carburetors are flying blind. And cars make so much power so fast anymore, it seems really easy to hurt your stuff. Most of the guys aren't doing 450, 500 horsepower small blocks with 100 shot of nitrous on them anymore. Like, it's super easy to make 1,500 horsepower even on stock components. And I'm not even saying just, it's not the carburetor, it's the way you go about it as far as engine management goes. There's no reason that you couldn't put an ECU on the car that controls everything. It's actually cheaper to go coil on plug than it is to buy a 7 box and then buy an HVC 2 coil. Between those two things, you actually just buy 8 coils and an ECU just controls it. And now you're able to control cylinders individually, like it's got 8 little engines in it, or a lot of guys don't see the benefit if they got OEM fuel injection. We already have EFI in the car. We've got a 411 GM ECU or a factory Coyote ECU or a factory even like Hellcat or anything that you could ship to, and you could take those really far. But again, we're adding on add-ons to do what we want to do. We're adding on a boost controller. We're adding on a 2-step controller to get off the line. We're adding in bump boxes and things like that. As crazy as it sounds, a $1,250 Terminator X kit has all those things built into it just by adding a relay or a solenoid. It actually ends up saving you a lot of money in the long run. Like on the starting off of just like your basic Terminator X which is the cheapest and most probably user friendliest way of getting into EFI. There's cheaper ways of getting into EFI with Mega Squirt, some other ones I'm not going to really get into, but I feel like the Holley software is probably the easiest to use. I'm going to do a screen share here in a second. You have to excuse me. I'm not as fast at this as our fearless leader.
Oh, don't put that on me.
All right, so here's our Terminator X kit. So what you're looking at here, and if you're doing the basic LS 24X combo, this little box is $1,250. This includes a wiring harness, which, you know, when I was going through that some of my car, a lot of stuff didn't include all the wiring. Everything you need to get up and going if you have a factory LS engine sitting in there. Okay. Now, not only is this controlling your fuel and your spark, which is fine and dandy. Again, we talk about being just a very little bit. This is your data logger. So this is going to, out of the box, data log your coolant temp. You have to add a $35 sensor for oil pressure, add a $35 sensor for fuel pressure, engine RPM. It's going to have, so fuel pressure, oil pressure, engine RPM, coolant temp, air intake temp, boost and or vacuum, as well as everything that it takes to run the engine. That's going to be all your stuff. And then it's got 4 other inputs to data log any other thing. So everything on top of the engine, and if you want to add like a dry shaft speed sensor, flex fuel sensor for flex content, things like that. This $1,250 box with minimal amount of sensors added on is now replaces your race pack, replaces your grid or your ignition box and controller. Then it's also going to be able to do a boost controller with $150 or less of add-on sensors and solenoids. A $75 relay will let it do your bump and your stage. This is your nitrous controller with just adding a solid state relay again for your nitrous solenoids. I guess I could go on. So this kit replaces over $2,500 worth of stuff, and then allows you to add and do tables yourself and do like safeties and checks and balances between everything. Are you guys following me so far? Let me try to get back to the thing and unscreen share.
Well, you can leave it up, and I can just, if you're gonna put more stuff up.
Yeah, there you go.
Just tell me when to bring it back up.
You see my mug again?
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So you replace your carburetor. Okay. Even if you keep your carburetor and you put one of those boxes on it, and this again is the cheapest, most inexpensive way to get into it for $1,200, and it does all that. For $1,200, you could set up a car to control your boost and or nitrous. You could set up for timing retard off of launch, off your trans brake button, control your trans brake, staging like your bump box. It's a 2-step rev limiter built into it. There's nothing else you don't have to do anything. You just have to hook it up with any type of sensor or solenoid on top of 4 other channels. Okay. Now going up to the next and better ones is going to be like your HP or your Dominator, which that ECU is yes, the solid state nitrous is definitely a game changer. I use that solid state for everything. Now, rolling up to a Dominator and HP, the HP still gives you the same 4 inputs and same outputs. The Terminator actually limits you what type of sensors you could run. The HP is still 4 inputs, 4 outputs, but it's a fully potted ECU, so they tend to be a little more robust. They're marine rated. If you do off-road truggies or things like that, that would be the ECU to definitely have. It's got some more tables and more features. Like the Terminator X will give you 1 stage of nitrous. The HP and Dominator will give you up to 8 stages of nitrous. So the HP can only give you 4 stages because it's only got 4 outputs. Now, the Dominator, I put up against any other ECU, dollar for dollar, feature for feature, for doing everything in one box. The Dominator not only does you control your engine and do all that stuff we talked about, but it has 43 inputs and 36 outputs to do other stuff, which means there's literally no reason to buy another box except for some extreme situations where if you're running 16 large injectors, you might have to buy an injector driver, the type of injector, they draw different amounts of currents or some other stuff like that. but the Dominator literally replaces the boost controller. I would put up against an AMS 2000. The nitrous controller I put up against any nitrous controller for doing what you need it to do. There's a lot of fast cars only running the Dominator. There's no need for a race pack. With 43 inputs and 36 outputs, you're now not limited at all. So now that is a $2,500 only ECU, but it replaces, you end up having probably $5,000 to $6,000 into by the time you get into a dash and stuff. But that replaces sometimes $10,000 or more in electronics. You guys follow me so far? Most
I think so. We got also Pro Dash.
Yeah. So the Holley dashes do give you ability to have CAN inputs. Everything's through CAN bus with the Holley. Most modern EFI systems, and that's think of it as like an internal network or internet through it. It's like a little one plug, and you could add gauges. You could add a input output box. But at the end of the day, it's just inputs and outputs, and able to control the engine or car at that point. Because then we're start adding shock sensors and things. Pressure sensors with transmission. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And the carburetor guys this is where they're getting overwhelmed. Like, I don't want to, I'm not going to do that shit. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to need that shit. But as the faster you go, the more you see needs for all that. There wouldn't be businesses built on just sensors, strictly selling sensors if they weren't needed and guys weren't using them. But going back to switching over from a carburetor, it's not as bad as you think. While a lot of times I have the guys keep their carburetors because they're comfortable with it, and we set up it to control everything else: the ignition, timing, their nitrous controller, their boost controller. However, whatever their power adder of choice is, we're going to control it, but keep the carburetor. And then when it comes time to go over to just fuel injection, it's as simple as just plugging in the injectors and plumbing the intake. Done some nitrous cars like that, actually, because nitrous guys are the last guys to get away from a carburetor, it seems. So,
go ahead. So what are the most basic, break it down to the most basic thing. What's the main advantage in changing from a carburetor to EFI? I know you've kind of talked about it, but like, what's the most basic description you could give, or benefit rather?
The ignition control is really what it comes down to. Like I said, the fueling is easy. Replacing your carburetor, some injectors, like say you have a perfect injector and perfect EFI, okay, a perfect carburetor, perfect EFI, the carburetor is probably still going to make a little more power, but it's not going to be as consistent, and it's not going to be the same every time. When you're going with just talk about the fueling and putting it as a port injection, you're able to then control the fuel at each cylinder. So you're able to trim fueling and ignition timing with coil and plug. So if you have an uneven intake or no engine's perfect, the ports aren't the same. There's always lean holes. There's always hot holes. There's always rich holes. So you're able to then pick and choose and trim those particular cylinders to make all your plugs look happy, something you cannot do with a carburetor. Okay, big deal. I got it. The ignition timing or controlling with coil on plug is where I like to see the benefit of it versus a distributor. Now you can do coil and plug again with a carburetor, and I find it still cheaper to use an ECU box to do it versus just buying an ignition controller. And it's not always about money, but it's also about future upgrades too. And excuse my dog's barking. Doing coil on plug, and if you do it the right way, it's not that expensive. You could use LS coils, which are good on gasoline to 2,000 horsepower, 1,500 horsepower in E85. You're able to now control the engine like it's 8 separate engines. Is the easiest way I can put it. You could trim timing per cylinder, and you could trim fueling per cylinder, where you cannot do that with a carburetor and a distributor. MSD obviously does have a way to do individual cylinder timing with a distributor, but you are also limited because you have rotor phasing, and the further that you change the timing, the further out rotor phasing gets, which is why you can't. If you ever had like a stick shift car at the distributor and you try pulling so much timing to get on the two-step, that'll actually just jump to the next cylinder in line instead of pulling the timing on that particular cylinder, if that makes any sense. I find the ignition, like the timing control, to be the most beneficial versus just the fueling. Like at the end of the day, when you set your fuel curve, you set your target air fuel, and you got it tuned in, that's it, you're done. Getting down a racetrack has everything to do about power management. And without having separate boxes and no fail safes in between them or no checks and balances, you're kind of just left with 3 different softwares or 2 different softwares or guessing, watching things happen, but not being able to do anything with them.
So the biggest benefit for EFI over carb is data acquisition and
data acquisition, and not only data, but doing something with that data. So we'll paint a picture for you. You have a high-end carburetor car. So you've got like the all-out MSD system. You've got a race pack on it, and you've got your carburetor. Okay. You head down the track and you lose oil pressure. Now on your data logger itself, on your race pack, it kicks a rod, destroys the engine, everything goes awry. You get back to your data logger and you go, what happened? Why did I dump my guts into my diaper? Because we're all going to run diapers, right? And not oil down the track and wreck. Why did I dump that in there? You go, okay, I lost oil pressure at 2 seconds and it launched the rods out at 5 seconds. Okay. Now, fast forward. Now you have an EFI box, or you have like your HP or Dominator, Terminator X, whatever, with an oil pressure sensor in it. Provided you set this up where your tuner sets it up, if you lose oil pressure, we'll just kill the ignition. We'll just shut the spark off going to the coils, and the engine just dies until either oil pressure comes back or you just pull over to the side like we're supposed to as well, So we're able to do something with that data. It's not just having the data acquisition, it's just doing something with that data. Are you guys follow me?
Yep.
That's what you don't get with most of your combos of parts of a race pack, ignition controller, nitrous controller, things like that.
So we got Joe Cameron. What's your experience with Terminator X Max and the add-on box?
It works very well. The Max is just going to give you drive-by-wire transmission control. So there's no difference between a Terminator X or X Max unless you need automatic transmission control or drive-by-wire. It's not going to change anything. So, hold on 1 second. Marco. My dog's going crazy. Now the add-on box gives you 10 extra inputs and 10 extra outputs to do stuff with. Now, it has limitations. It's CAN-based, so it's not as fast as it would be if it was going directly into the ECU. So some sensors, you could pick the slew rate or how fast it reacts, but it will affect other ones because there's only so much data it can travel, which that's not that big of a deal. The biggest issue that you run into is that Holley gives you controls throughout their tools. So like their nitrous controller, you cannot use that input box for their nitrous controller. It could only be custom inputs or custom outputs that you set up. So if you're trying to use all the Holley's, the tools that they give you without having to do custom tables or make them yourself, that IO box kind of is limited that way. It does bridge the gap between having a Dominator and a Terminator X for a lot less money.
Next question, Dean Michaels. What about us classic car guys who want reliability?
Well, we have a solution for you guys too. We have drop-on carburetor replacement types, like a 4150 style throttle body with the injectors built in. It's going to give you the same benefits of pretty much a perfect carburetor. So it'll have feedback from an O2 sensor. So if you tell it what you want your air fuel ratio going to be, it's going to be it no matter what. It's going to have a pressure, a map sensor, barrel sensor, coolant pressure, coolant temp, and air intake temp. So it adjusts accordingly for weather at that point. So it's going to run the same no matter what. Now the fuel distribution is going to be the same as a carburetor. It'll be like a perfect carburetor every single time, no matter what. as well as drop-in distributors for timing control. So you don't even lose the look of it. You just actually have a car that runs like a perfect carburetor all the time. This Terminator Stealth X Max is that also, I guess, is a good lead into the guys that talk about like the Sniper or the Phytech or the all-in-one fuel injection kits, which are the ways to get in the fuel injection for the right that $1,000 price range, which is never $1,000 because by the time that you install it, then you realize that it doesn't really work with your distributor or your ignition. So then you go and you buy the ignition kit for it, and then you're like, well, I screwed the fuel pump to the frame rail. Every time I turn a corner, it stalls, so I better go buy the EFI. So it's always more than just $1,000, no matter whose it is. The issue, I'm not a big fan of the Snipers. I get a ton in the shop. I tune a ton of them. I will not sell them anymore. And it's not because it's Holley and they're the best all-in-one EFI kit that they sell. But they're all shitty in my opinion, because every car's different and the ECU is built into the unit, which means it turns that unit into a big antenna. So you run into so many electrical noise. I have like an 80% success rate with them, which means 20% of the time we have issues. So which means that we don't really, overall, they don't really make much money working on them all the time when you're fighting one of them. Things like using stainless braided fuel line going up to it. It's really common. That's a big no-no. That turns them into even more of an antenna. The plug wires that you use, most guys want to use like a 50 ohm per foot plug wire, a non-resistor spark plug, a high current ignition systems, a big ignition box. Well, that wreaks havoc on electrical noise to those units. So if you want to do an all-in-one, just don't spend an extra $500, buy the Terminator X Stealth kit, which is the same look, but instead of having the ECU mounted inside the unit on top of the engine, with noisy electrical high current shit all around it, it puts the ECU inside the car away from everything, and you'll have like a 95 to 99% success rate without having issues.
Next question, Marco Wilson from Facebook. What's the best way to set TPS on carb with a Dominator set with 2 kits of nitrous?
So you definitely need throttle position sensor is very, very, very important. The newer Dominator carbs, I think they're the Gen 3s, have a spot for a GM TPS. If you have an older Dominator carburetor, you probably don't have that. But there is, and let me look it up real quick for you. There is a kit that goes on your pedal. We actually use it on HD's car also. I can't remember the name of the company. I always got to Google it. But it's actually really handy. Let me look it up here. Hold that thought. There's a couple companies that do, but the one that goes on the throttle pedal. Let me find it. Not like have a dead air while I try to find this kit. You could also PM me later. I have it stored on my computer, like at work, as like one of those quick links because we order them a few times.
Yeah, well, Marco can do that.
I just can't remember. There's a kit that goes on your throttle pedal. It's about $200. It's like The
Call
brackets.
in. I just put the number back up again, Marco. Just give him a call in the morning.
Yeah, shoot me a message on Facebook. I'll send you the link tomorrow when I'm at my computer with it in front of my face, because I am not having luck with Google right now. You know how it goes when you put on the spot. But there's a very handy kit that makes it real easy to go on a throttle pedal. You pretty much screw it to your firewall, and as the pedal goes up and down, it goes up and down. We used, in fact, HD still have his for sale. Since we actually went to a throttle body on his car. But it worked pretty good. It wasn't bad.
Mark Sabecki asks, Terminator stealth kits compared to other kits for switching from carb, which is better?
So the Terminator stealth kit would be better than any all-in-one like a Sniper or a Phytech. It also, compared to the software, the Sniper for controls or extra add-ons, the Terminator software gives you more options. If you could afford it, try to go port injection off the rip. It actually ends up not being as much as you think it is. It's that you have to do a little bit of going to different brand parts and looking other ways of um, different intake manifolds, or using maybe a knockoff version, or converting yours, and a little bit of welding and fabrication if buying a fuel rail kit. One of the guys we just set up, and Pat, you might want to chime in, but he wanted to do a Sniper at first, and I says, no, don't do a Sniper. If you're going to do it, do a Terminator Stealth X. But really, you should just do port injection and just get it done, because it's really the best way of doing it. Throttle body injection's cool. It gives you like a perfect carburetor and all that stuff, but it's still at the end of the day, we're in 2023, and that's 1980s technology. That's 40-year-old technology. Let's get into the 90s and 2000s and put the injector in the port, so we could really dial in and fix any flaws as far as flow goes in the engine. At least have the same fueling per cylinder, not one lean or one rich hole. It's not. It ends up being maybe $500 more if you don't mind using like an off-brand throttle body and doing a little bit of work yourself. You could get it done. Not as expensive. If you get sticker shocked when you open up the Summit catalog and you're like, man, I got to buy this $600 throttle body. Well, the Speedmaster one for $180 actually is pretty nice and works pretty good. And I'm not a big advocate of cheap Chinese parts, but when they work, they work. So
wow. A block of aluminum and a butterfly valve with a spring.
It's hard, right. It's now there is some stupid shit about them. I went through with their Dominator one that I could actually had some weird problems going on with a car, and I could have sworn the throttle was closing halfway down the track. And I got in there and had the guy hold the throttle wide open. And I was actually able to push the butterfly shut with my fingers. But there you could go in there and fix some of that stuff. The 4150 throttle body is actually made a little bit better. They're the dumbest thing about the Speedmaster or the Pro Comp, whatever that is, that Chinese throttle body, the 4150 series one at least, is it uses a throttle position sensor that's not existent. So they
I went through this.
Okay, well, I have a solution for that actually now. So you have to buy their throttle position sensor. And the one thing I try to use or do when I sell someone an EFI setup, I tell them what sensors to go buy from the parts store, so you have a lifetime warranty on it, right? Like if you buy the Holley branded throttle position sensor, it's just a GM TPS that you could either go on Amazon or go to the parts store. If you go to like your local O'Reilly's, you're gonna get a lifetime warranty on it, which means you can swap it out as much as you want for free. If you buy from Holley, you don't really get that. So you pay $80 for it from Holley, you pay $50 from the parts store, and you get a lifetime warranty. So I'm like, hey, just go to the parts store. These are the part numbers of what make and model to get it from. The throttle position sensor in those cheap throttle bodies is a forward bolt pattern, but it uses a GM D-shaped shaft. So they had to make their own. Well, my partner Chuck is so cheap that he bought that throttle body. And I said, well, listen, you're going to buy that throttle body, but you got to buy their $90 throttle position sensor and wire it in. And so he get it. And he went through the same thing I did and tried ordering a bunch of sensors, went to the parts store to find one that fit. I think a couple of us have done this, right? Same thing I did. But so we have a customer / friend of ours that's like a CNC guy that then we just start, hey Mike, if you're listening, thank you. Can you make this part that doesn't work? So he had designed an adapter that slips over the shaft, so you could just use a standard Ford throttle position sensor, and you just have them 3D printed up, and we'll have them in stock here to sell and get if anybody needs them. So you could use a off the shelf Fox body throttle position sensor on your cheap Proform or whatever Speedmaster, whatever brand that is, throttle body. That's actually a really nice unit, except for they screwed up and never fixed it with an unobtainable throttle position sensor. We have a solution to use a parts store one with it now.
Chucky Muskrat. Go ahead.
That was an E-Trans Controller LLC HD set, by the way, for that throttle position sensor for a carburetor that has a carburetor that doesn't have a spot for a TPS.
Chucky Muskrat, who probably is your actual true most annoying Ford customer, wants to. So, dumb question for you: why do some people run MSD box with their Holley Term X? Is there a good reason?
So, if you're not doing coil on plug, and you're just running a standard distributor like a Holley, like a dual sync distributor that gives you a cam and a crank in one unit, you need something to fire the coil. The coil is a high current thing. The ECU doesn't fire it directly. It needs an ignition module of some sort. So the MSD box works as that box that can fire the coil. If you're doing coil and plug, you don't need any type of MSD box. But if you're sticking with a standard distributor with standard wires and EFI, you need some sort of ignition module. And so the easiest way on like a small block Chevy or a small block Ford that doesn't use a TFI distributor like a old school one would be just to run an MSD box. I run the 6415, which is a straight up just MSD box with no options on it, because you don't need a rev limit. You don't need any type of two-step built in. You don't need any options. You just need an MSD box just to fire the coil. And it doesn't have to be an MSD brand. It could be the Crane Fireball. It could be even an old Excel 300 plus box with, just something to fire the coil, and then depending on how much power you make, and that's going to depend on how much ignition box you need, but normally if it's more than just like a standard deal, like a 500 horsepower 383 stroke or something like that, if we're doing any type of power adder, I'm usually pushing you guys to go to coil on plug, because at the end of the day, it's not that much, especially if you don't mind sourcing some like used LS coils, like OEM ones. They're very cheap. It ends up being cheaper than buying an MSD box by the time you spend $100 on a set of used coils and a little sub harness, and you're running coil and plug without an MSD box. It just takes a little more work, but it's just so much better.
Kevin Haney, what's the out of the box quality control like? I got a Term X that's never fired the injectors. Everything else checks out good. What are the chances it's bad out of the box?
Higher than they are in HP or Dominator. Again, I probably sell 100 of those or more a year. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I get a handful of bad out of the box ones in the shop. We've had it a few times. And I can't stress this enough from going through a good dealer. Like when guys buy from me and they have an issue like that, give me the box. I'll take care of it. I'll get you another one. Some will normally like exchange it, but if you're out of the 90-day like deal, you're just kind of stuck with it. Generally, I try to take care of that, even if it's out of warranty, and if it's we know if it's reasonable or not. If you ran it over with your truck and you bring it back to me and want me to exchange it, I'm like, no, you know what I mean? But like this is where helping out either the small mom and pop guys, or if you have a dealer that you work with, not only can we be like super reliable when it comes to like asking install questions, tuning help, or questions after the fact, like you can really lean on us versus buying directly off like Amazon for it, and then you don't really have anybody to ask. And if you like start messaging like me, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of an asshole move, like I'll answer questions. I want to help everybody. But I'm more apt to bend over backwards if you bought from me versus, hey, I bought all this stuff from Joe Schmo or I bought off Amazon and I'm having some trouble, like
Well, that's what that extra $50 you guys charge over Amazon pays for, is the tech
yeah,
support
and honestly,
and the
I beat someone's
knowledge.
price every time. Like there's no, but like I'm usually pretty good on price too. Not that like, trying to do a shameless plug for myself or anything, but uh,
Right. Well,
the
yeah, but
only thing that I can't compete with some of this is the stocking stuff. Like I just and I do work really close with Summit on their commercial line. So if they don't, if Summit doesn't have it and I don't have it, like I could still get it, even if whether it's directly through Summit or if I don't have it in stock, because I do stock a lot of stuff. It's just really hard to stock everything. And if Summit doesn't has it, I can normally get it out to you and still, be very, very competitive on price. Um, so we're not not even more expensive, but sometimes I get it. And we have racing seasons coming up and we're plagued with back orders. I'll tell you, like, you might just need to buy that off Amazon, you know what I mean? And just, if you're coming to me for tuning, just throw me a few bucks or something, just so, I could be here next year to help,
in short, none of you motherfuckers go to work for free. He don't either. I'll just summarize it for you, Rick.
Thank you. But yeah.
Eric wants to know opinion on using dual sync distributor with coil on plug, missing tooth crank trigger with TPS on carb.
So the dual sync works well, and you can do a little billet cap and do coil and plug with it. Now, the dual sync's going to have its limitations. The limitations is you do have flex. If it's a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy with the cam with the distributor in the back, you have the flex of the timing chain or drift of the timing chain. You have the flex of the camshaft, especially if you have a solid roller. And then you have the play in the timing gear itself on the distributor. So all those things added together, you don't get solid timing. Now there is a setting in there called inductive delay that's meant to try to tune that out. But I don't know anybody here that's ballsy enough to put a timing light on an engine at 7,000 RPM or while it's making a pass down the track hanging on. So you rev it up to 4,500 to see if it drifts a little bit and you call it good. Now at different loads and different positions, that timing there's so many things affecting whether it's going to be solid or there's play and everything. If you use a crank trigger, you're now referencing at the crankshaft and not the distributor after all those things come into play. So I tell guys like, hey, a dual sync, even with coil and plug, works great. If you are, I usually say like if you're at over 1,000 horsepower, you should be referencing from the crank. And it's not even so much that, at 1,000 horsepower, more shit happens that your timing isn't accurate. It's just at 1,000 horsepower or more, and even under that, but the shit goes wrong and it goes wrong really fast, and your window of error is very limited. Like if a 1 degree swing or a 2 degree swing on a naturally aspirated deal normally doesn't like kill it. A 2 or 3 degree swing on a 1,000 horsepower boosted deal or nitrous deal can kill it and can hurt things. So if you have an engine that's pretty serious like that, just do the crank trigger and reference your timing from the crank. Now, the cam sensor's only job is to tell it when number one's coming around. That could have play and drift. That doesn't really matter. It's got to be plus or minus 30 degrees of right for the ECU to see it. And the only job of it is to see when number one comes around. So using the dual sync for a cam sync or using one of those MSD cam sync adapters, or there's a handful of places that make one using the cam sensor from like a 5-liter Ford or adapting it for different, that's fine. I just try to use some sort of crank trigger, whether it's a flying magnet, 24 tooth, a 24-1, I just try to reference the timing at the crank. I don't really care much how we reference it. Obviously there's a big debate of, 24X versus 58X, which one's better, or, you get more resolution if you have a 58 tooth versus a 24 tooth, or a 4 magnet. I've made over 2,000 horsepower on a 4-magnet without any issues. It seems to work fine for me. Like I don't know how much is really in that, the importance of how much resolution you have. Like if the ECU is even doing anything with those tooth counts in between, a piston being at top dead center. But I always, so to me, I don't care how you reference a crankshaft. Reference a crankshaft if you love your motor and you make a lot of power.
Robert Zimmerman on Facebook. Is there much of an advantage in running 2 O2 sensors versus running only one?
So I don't get tied up on having 2 O2s of the importance of it. It's nice for data logging. The great thing about Holley is that their O2 correction is very fast and it works very well. It works better than any other ECUs that I've seen, that I've played around with. The bad part of that is it lets people live and die by the O2 sensor. You could literally have a 2,000 horsepower car and your tune be in left field and be okay because the O2 sensor is correcting 150% and it just goes down the track because your target air fields were exactly where you set it at. I think of an O2 sensor as a reference. I get the engine dialed in, and then I look at the O2 as a reference. So I don't try not to live and die by that O2 sensor. So having 2 O2 sensors, nice for data logging to see if you have an issue. You will see a misfire on one side. It'll show up lean because misfires show up lean because it's their oxygen sensors, not fuel sensors. So that's a little tip if anybody's ever trying to figure out why it's showing lean on their O2 sensor and it's dumping fuel. It's because you have a misfire. You got one cylinder just pumping fresh air past that O2. So yes, if you have a Dominator and you have a twin turbo setup or an NA deal, and you're going to spend the extra $500 or $600 to add the second O2, definitely do it. If you're choosing what money to spend, sometimes that money might be spent better on another sensor than it is having 2 O2s. Like definitely have one. You could periodically switch them from side to side to make sure, you're side to side. But at the end of the day, we should be reading spark plugs and making sure they all look the same and read the same and basing our fuel calculations off of spark plugs, not what the O2 sensor says. Make sense? All right, cool.
Do you need to use part number 554-128 trans brake input protection module with solid state relay for trans brake hookup?
No, you need one or the other. The protection module and the protection module is there for flyback voltage. So the way a coil works is just an ignition coil. So you charge it, you release the energy from it, then it fires a spark, right? That's how points or whatever do it, like how they work on an old school car. The points come, it charges it, and then dwells how long it charges it. And this might be getting a little too much into, I guess, like technical, but the protection module, your trans brake is an ignition coil, which means that when you give it power on your trans brake button, when you let off, it has to discharge. When it releases, it discharges that voltage somewhere, and they see it as a voltage spike. So if you had a voltmeter on that wire coming back to the ECU, if you just tied it in, you would see sometimes 80, 90 volts for a split second going back to the input of the ECU, and it could fry it. So the protection module is just a capacitor that loops that power to ground. So you hook it up, you put a little ground to it, it absorbs that spike, so the ECU doesn't see that spike in power. The problem with the protection module and wiring it up that way is that the ECU still sees the power even after you release the button. It may only be 1/10 of a second or 0.5 of a second, but it's enough that if you had a dry shaft speed sensor and you watched your dry shaft RPM, your 2-step would be on for a split second while your wheels are actually rolling. So it's going to affect your reaction time, could slightly affect your 60 foot. The best way of wiring up a trans brake would be using that solid state relay, sending an input into the ECU to say, hey, the trans brake's on. The ECU would then send a ground signal out to that solid state relay activating the trans brake. That keeps all the high current mumbo jumbo away from the ECU and also doesn't have a delay in time when you let off the button. You need one or the other. So it's either the solid state relay deal or the protection module. For the test and tuner guys that aren't for the ease of wiring, a lot of times we'll just use the protection module because they're not competitive racing, or they're just doing test and tuning, or they just want to make pops and bangs for their friends at the local Cars and Coffee. So it's a $20 module versus a $75 module and extra work, but it's one or the other. Another shameless plug is I do a like an 8-hour like course that I do once a month in the off season at my shop for 8 people that we kind of go over like 8 to 10 hours worth of all things Holley EFI, like an intro course, and we go over wiring all this stuff in it. So I do have 2 spots available still for my January 14th excuse me class if anybody wants to get on that. Shameless plug.
Oh wait, I thought you were. What's the 14th? Is that Saturday?
That's a Saturday.
I may actually be able to make that one.
Well, don't make sure you're off that COVID shit before you bring it up.
No, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. So I'm not. I can't even catch it for 90 days now.
Oh, good,
so
good.
We're there. We're good there. I'm not a SARS monkey anymore. Reese, Holley to control traction control, or Davis set up while having Holley already.
So I just run the Holley active speed management. The Holley active speed management is the only thing that Holley's charged extra for to unlock the feature, and it is pretty good. Now, is it the Davis VMS or I put it? I liked it better than the TC2 Davis box, which I had previous to that. Now, whether it compares to the Davis their profiler, I can't really say it's better than the profiler, but the profiler is also considerably more expensive. The Holley works with either one. The profiler pretty much takes over all the control and just tells the Holley what to do with the timing. The active speed management on the Holley, it's a lot more explained than what we probably have time for, but it's like following the dots. If you had like an MSD on the MSD grid where you set up a dry shaft curve, and it'll pull timing if you get outside that curve, and if you get too far outside that timing, it'll put on a rev limiter. The active speed management works very well, but you have to have a good dry shaft curve from the get-go. Like you can't just turn it on and then send the car down the street and it works. And to that note, traction control is not, you don't rely on traction control. Traction control is there to save a pass that would have normally been like diverted or been like either wrecked or spun out of control or not went down. You would have lifted anyway. Like it's, you don't just traction control, no matter what, turn the boost up and it'll just run it, because it's just going to slow the car down. Anytime you run, if you just ride traction control, it's just pulling timing and pulling power out of the car. So you still need to have some skill, read the, hello. So hello, Marco. Good dog. Good dog. That's my wiener dog, Mr. Marco.
Marco, tell everybody hi.
Okay, Mr. Marco.
He said, I don't care about everybody.
No, he don't. He's a
love me.
He's a good dog, though. He's a good dog. So don't live and die by traction control. Whether you're going to use the Davis box, if you're comparing it between the $1,000 like TC2 and the active speed management, I say definitely go with the active speed management. I don't see the benefit to it, or at least I didn't. There might be someone that knows more or has a better understanding of it than I do. Now the profiler, again, I'm not going to get all into the differences. That's a pretty badass unit.
But that's also like,
it's not cheap.
It's a 10 grand add-on.
Basically, they have it like depending on the options. I think it starts like $2,500 and then it goes up. You have to look at all that and see if the juice is worth the squeeze. Now, if your shit don't work and no track surface, no street, nothing, and you're looking at buying that $10,000 box isn't going to fix your shit. Like, you need to have control of your car. You need to have a handle on the situation before that's going to give you any type of benefit. Because if your tune's in left field or you don't know how to manage the power to get it down any type of surface, adding a $10,000 box isn't going to do anything for you. It's just going to make your car slow. It'll make it go down the street every time, but it'll just make it go down the street every time slow. So, but you need it like for most of the traction controls to work. You need drag racing traction control, or, this is an acceleration based style, not front versus rear wheel speed and things like that. But for it to actually work, you need to have a good running car from the get go. And then you're able to use that as data to go off of for different conditions. So
I think that probably could be an episode in itself.
trans braking 2-step. Yeah.
And traction control. Yeah. Denise Goodman, in your experience, which intake, throttle body, injector, and Holley box to convert a 23-degree Chevy for nitrous or turbo?
That's a conversation we have to have. With you got to call me on that one. I just can't. I don't do a one size fits all recommendation on guys because everyone's budget and capability and expectations are all different. If I could tell you this, if you could afford to buy a Dominator, buy a Dominator. Buy once, cry once. I do a trade-in program with HPs and Terminator X's, where I'll give you trade-in credit when you go up to a Dominator. And at that note, if you start off with a Terminator X, get the car all wired and running on a Terminator X, and you want to upgrade to a Dominator, you simply unplug it, change the O2 sensor, and you're back up and running on a Dominator. Like, you don't, the wiring harness is the same, all the hookups are the same, so you don't have to, I guess, worry about that part of it. But I've never had anybody want to return a Dominator or say this didn't do what I wanted to do, or I outgrew it. I want it. Can you trade it in or downgrade me to a Terminator X? So if you could afford the Dominator, just buy it because you'll never have to worry about upgrading. But
even if you can't save up and buy it, that's what I had to do.
Yeah. I mean, I also get that, I've been in the boat like where it's like you either buy the Terminator X and you get it done and you go out and have fun, or you don't race for 2 seasons,
but then you have exactly what you want and you didn't buy shit 2 and 3 times, which is
Correct.
why I've been sitting out for so long. I mean, that's my personal philosophy.
Let's take that a step further though. So, and I get all that. You buy once, cry once type of thing. Hold on one second.
But most people won't do a trade-in, so this is the first time hearing about this trade-in.
Yeah, I do the trade-in deal. Now, even if you don't do the trade-in, not a big deal. You could sell it. You could put it on Marketplace and sell it. So in that $1,250 box of the Terminator X, and mind you, I'm not just trying to sell you anything, because obviously I'm here to try to sell some shit, right? Because that's what I do for a living. But the profit margin on the Terminator X is considerably less than a Dominator HP. But I also see the value in it. So in that $1,250 box, you get a engine harness, which is a $450 engine harness. You get injector harness, is $120. You get a 3.5-inch screen, which is they're like almost $300 now. You get an O2 sensor, a couple an input output harness, which is another $80. So if you price all that stuff up individually, it's $1,800 normally is what that costs with the Terminator X box. So if you go to then, a year or two down the road, you outgrow the Terminator X, and you go to trade it in or just sell it for $500, you're really not out any money. You're just out a little bit of time. The only thing that would be a loss in that situation is the O2 sensor, and the Terminator X O2 sensor is a cheaper, $80 O2 sensor. Now, the reason why I don't try to, if you could afford it, buy the Dominator. Like, if you're walking in and the money's just not an issue, you're going to spend $50,000 on your car, but a lot of guys aren't like that. And it's like, I want to get my car up and going. And let's be honest, probably 60 to 70% of the guys that are listening right now won't even use the features of what a Dominator could give them probably for a couple years. So what it is I'm new to EFI. I'm going to get my feet wet. I'm going to buy this Terminator X because it's an affordable way to get into EFI. It does a lot of cool things. And then you start seeing the cool things that could be done if you had more inputs and outputs. And that's when you get to the point where I want a Dominator now. So the Terminator X is a good way to get into it without having to put all the investment into it. And you're really not losing anything because you don't have to rip it all back out of the car to reinstall a Dominator. You just, when you're installing it, make sure you have enough room for the bigger Dominator box, Now, if you have a long-term project where, if you have a car sitting there, it's done, and you just need to wire it for EFI, like, I'm not going to tell you, hey, don't race this year and don't buy the Terminator X. But if you're going to be like, I want to buy the Terminator X and the 12-inch dash, I'm going to be the first to tell you that's stupid. Don't do that. Like, and there's probably a couple guys that listening that have the 12-inch dash, because I've always told them, like, the dash doesn't make you go any faster and doesn't really give you any capability. Buy the Dominator instead, because that's the difference in price is buying the 12-inch dash. But some people want that bling blow of a 30-inch plasma TV in their dash. Is that you? That you got the 12-inch?
Yes, but listen, I won exactly what I wanted, and I was willing to wait.
And that's fine.
I mean?
That's fine.
I know some people don't do that.
But do you have a Terminator X on a 12-inch dash?
No.
Okay. Right.
No, I have Dominator.
Yeah.
But my fiberglass dash was made for the 12-inch dash, and we ordered the 6.8. But man, I was just like, ugh, it would drive me nuts. I am one of those guys, so it was worth waiting.
6.8. You know, and I had the original
having
5
a hole like this,
whatever.
the dash like that would drive me nuts.
You know, I don't. This is and this is what a dash does. If you're a street car, you're driving down the road and you're looking and you're like, okay, I got oil pressure. Okay, I got fuel pressure. Okay, you know, you go to the track, you are not looking at that dash going down the track. You're like, you look at it maybe when you're getting on the two-step or before you do a burnout, you do a quick load. Is it my overheating? Do I have oil pressure? And half you motherfuckers don't even do that. This thing's at 250 and you're staging it. Yeah. I'm motherfuckers, right? So
to be honest.
We've all done it. We have all done. We all got off on that trans brake when our transmission's boiling over and the motor's at 250 degrees. Like, we all done it, you know. But that's what like, you look down at the dash, you go, okay, my engine's alive. I'm gonna send it. Hopefully, it's not for the last time, you know. So I'm not like I just don't like it. The 12-inch dash is cool if you've got it, if you can afford it or you want to wait or whatever. But if you're like you're budgeting a car build and you're like, I'm going to get the 12-inch dash and a Terminator X because, you know, the Terminator X is behind the dash. No one could see it. And, you know, the 12-inch dash is where everyone can see it. So I'm going to be bougie or whatever. You know,
I agree with you on that.
I'd rather see you have a Dominator, a little 3.5-inch screen in the center. That's the, you know, because I feel that's going to make you go faster. And that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm like, yeah, don't. And we make pretty good money on those dashes too. So I want to be like, don't buy that dash. Buy a Dominator instead. So.
We gotta get to these questions. Let's John Murphy. I'm setting up to run Terminator X Ford multi-port on an old FE 427 engine with a Holley distributor AccuFab throttle body. Is there anything else I might need?
Sounds like it. I mean, fuel injectors. You know, a little note on if you're switching over using a different brand throttle body and not an LS, Holley's ECUs are wired for Chrysler IACs because the IAC that is in all the 4-barrel throttle bodies that Holley makes, their universal ones are actual Chrysler IACs, and they're the same plug as a GM IAC. So you have to swap pins A and C. So if you wonder why your shit doesn't idle and does weird stuff, and you have like an AccuFab or a different brand throttle body using a GM IAC, that's why. I probably fielded that call on tons of tunes. And after it's been through other tuners and other people, and the car just won't idle or it's inconsistent and so on and so forth. That's why. So the FE guy, that's one thing you're going to run into. You make sure you swap those 2 wires. Other than that, it sounds like you've got everything. You might need an ignition box. I didn't hear you mention that. But feel free to shoot me messages, guys, if you want to talk about your combo or get me on the phone or stop in and we could get you squared away in the right parts the first time.
What intake do you recommend to get away from my stock 93 5.0 intake, but keep it under the hood?
I'd probably do the Autobrock Performer PM, or in your case, actually a 4150. Because I think you run nitrous, if I remember correctly. A 4150 4-hole deal would be pretty badass on that car. Definitely get you some more air.
I've seen crank sensors failure. Is that common?
On what? That
question was from 20 minutes ago.
Sorry,
Steven.
bud. Yes,
We'll
I
come
see
back.
all sensors fail. I can tell you LS sensors because I know you guys are like into LSs. And this actually goes with any like probably factory. The parts store shit is shit, man. The Chinese, like the standard, the dorm, whatever crank sensors that you buy from we just ran into this. My partner's LS swap C10. Like, hey, I got this. I ordered some sensors from the parts store because I had them. He put them in. The thing would run like shit, error, be dumb, dumb shit. And he came back to the shop, grabbed some used OEM ones out of another motor that was there, and the thing fired up and worked perfect. I would definitely make sure that you guys use OEM sensors for your LS or factory, Gen 3 Hemis or Coyotes or whatever you're running.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of my mechanic friends. They
Yeah.
just get shit out of the box, even regular repair stuff, just trash.
Just trash out of the box. Like you're just set for failure anymore, it seems.
I want to turn off my cam sensor on my G3 Hemi. Such a POS, unreliable sensor.
HP Jeremy.
ECU.
Yeah, I know. I feel your pain. You're like, just some people that the shit just doesn't work. That's one of them. And I've been that person too, where you just run into something and there's just no answer for it. He's just one like everyone else's shit works. I don't know why you. So
Holley's latest software states tighter two-step with more pickups on crank trigger.
Say that again.
Holley's latest software states tighter two-step with more pickups on the crank trigger.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Guilty for not doing as much. Yeah, I'm guilty for being broke too, man.
Yeah.
What do you do? Racing will do that real quick.
Racing's never made anybody a millionaire unless they start off as a billionaire first, right?
Yeah. I have a Dominator, thinking of putting both internal and external dump valves. Can my Dominator control this?
100%. I run that on my combo. I just run those solid state relays, the NOS ones, but you can use any brand. But the NOS ones are a simple 3-wire. They work great.
So for racers, you recommend solid state relays. I will have my trans protection module for sale now. Yeah, that relay's nice. Let's see. I know I've been missing some of you guys on the stars. Thanks a lot for that. Appreciate it. James, all-wheel drive or traction control?
James, what do you say?
All-wheel drive or traction control?
And what? Neither. Make your shit work. Shocks. You need shocks, James.
It works pretty. That thing works pretty good. Hope to see you out a little more, man. I love that Mustang.
It works so good. Thing. Like if you knew what that thing doesn't have and how good it works for what it is, there's just like so much potential in that crazy thing, and it's fucking completely insane.
No, I fucked the hell out of it a couple of times, and we've had a couple conversations, man. That thing,
I don't know if I'd have the balls to drive that thing like that is.
Well,
like it's like the drag racing.
Think about it, right?
Yeah, it's like the drag racing version of a fucking mechanical bull. Try to stay on. That's why you gotta go. Stay on for 8 seconds.
So Mike Hernandez, Cast Club USA. Okay, sorry, Mike. Can you talk a little bit about two-step trans brake? I think we covered that.
Yeah, and we're gonna go a little more in depth in that when we get into like ignition timing and some other stuff. This really we kind of went a little off the rails, but there's only so much reasons why you would make the switch, I guess, is really what I was trying to get over. Like the benefits, and the cost of it isn't as much as everyone seems to think. So
what is the cost for classes?
They're $200 a person, and you get free lunch and snacks and coffee.
Oh shit!
It's enough where, like, again, it's worth me being away for 10 hours and it being worth it, you know. Been doing it for 2 years now, and I give you a money back guarantee. If you don't get anything out of it, if you don't think we went covered anything, if you think I'm an asshole, I'll gladly hand you your $200 back.
Can you post your personal phone number for us so we can get one-on-one questions answered from you?
No.
I did post the shop number a couple times.
Yeah, you call me at the shop, you shoot me messages, you know. And funny thing is, Greg has my personal number because you have to spend $100,000 with us or more to get my personal number. That's my rule. Or I have to like you.
It's not a bad rule.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Like for Greg, I like him and he spent a bunch of money.
This dude right here, bad motherfucker, like right there, Sean. Let's see. We're a little bit behind. Let me see here. Man, people feeling attacked about the 12-inch dash, but I agree with him. I mean, listen,
hey,
if you got the Terminator and the 12-inch dash, that's kind of what you're doing.
I know there's a couple guys. I know Mike Long, which is he's the guy that's making those adapters for us. Right there. He's awesome though. And we had this conversation when he was doing it too, and I talked shit right to his face. So he's like, I just want, and guess what? And guess what he just did? He traded that bitch in on a Dominator this year. Yeah, Sean, I ordered your intake, I think. Yeah, I did. I ordered it. Probably.
Yeah, Pat, listen, it's up on Facebook, it's up on YouTube. I never take them down. They'll be up forever. So if you've come in partway through or whatever, probably 10 minutes after we're done, Facebook will re-upload it so you can view the whole thing again. And same thing with you. Well, YouTube will have it ready to view like in 13 seconds. But who's inbox, Steven? How are you doing anyways? Are you out of the hospital? I haven't been on Facebook much. Oh, yeah, let's see. Here we go. Uh-oh, what's this? Oh, I can't play the music because they'll freaking shut the live feed down, but is that you tune into DMX?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't. If I play it, they'll shut the live feed down because it's, copyright.
Sometimes I gotta get a little bit of DMX. And,
no, I get it, man. I get the earbuds in,
I
get
what these bitches want from a Richard,
sometimes you gotta get in, sometimes you gotta be romantic, sometimes you gotta be ready to scrap, sometimes you gotta be about that gangster rap. I get it.
Yes. Sometimes a little bit of bluegrass, just get in the mood,
Bluegrass, yeah. Oh, listen, I can get in my old Hank and Waylon moods too now.
one cool thing, I'll do another little. Looks like Douglas mentioned our plug and play. I'm working with a company called Race Products, which is if any of the Ford guys remember Rick Anderson from Anderson Motorsports, like the OG Ford dude, the Anderson PMS, the original piggybacks, like all the cams I have, you guys are probably still running. He's actually my Holley rep, and he's also started another company called Race Products, and they're making plug and plays to unplug your factory ECU and plug in a Holley ECU. So they've got one for first gen Coyote. So you could literally, if you have and we actually just done it to a GT500 too. But if you take out your factory, if you have 11 to 14, so a Gen 1 Coyote, you could unplug the stock ECU, plug in what's called a gateway, which then plugs into the Dominator ECU, and you turn your key on, you load a tune to the Holley, and you're up and tuning on Holley. The gateway takes the CAN data from the factory, that the factory BCM needs, and then reads it off of Holley, converts it all. so everything works like normal. You do lose ABS, traction control, just for the liability part of it. You lose that, but everything works. Your key works, your air conditioning works. You don't really know anything other than it's not a factory ECU that you're tuning. If it's an auto car, it uses with that US auto shift trans controller to tune the trans. It's really slick. You could be up and running on a Holley ECU in 45 minutes with that kit, which means no custom wiring your car. So if you have a really hot
That's gangster.
Coyote, and then there's definitely benefits of having a standalone. Well, the faster guys are going to some sort of a standalone. This is one they use without rewiring the whole car. I've done a few of them like deep into the 7-second range with that setup. Also have it for E38 ECUs, except for 2007 Corvette, which uses an E38 ECU, but doesn't. I only mention that because we did that on Steve's. But it's still wired and worked. It just didn't run the factory gauges. But so 08 and up, Corvette, 5th gen Camaro, E38 pickup trucks. We have a gateway for those. Again, you just unplug the factory ECU, plug this little gateway in, you plug it into the Holley Terminator X, Dominator, whichever it is, and you're up and running on a full standalone and have all the features of the Holley, the boost control, the flex fuel tuning, the 2-step rev limit, the power management. And now I stepped up and was like, hey, man, like we need to do some more. What can I do? I want to really do some 99 to 04 Mustang. I saw as a little hole because a lot of 03, 04 Cobra guys are starting to get to the point where they really need standalones. And I tune a lot of factory Ford stuff also. And I know how frustrating it gets on the higher power stuff with big injectors and big maps and scaling everything down. And it's just time for a standalone in those cars. So we're working on, I got the prototype done, testing it on an automatic car this week, sending it out to get the harness to get made. So probably next week I'm going to set out a pre-order, but in 8 weeks we'll have a plug and play option for all the 99 to 04 Mustang guys, including 03, 04 Cobras. You'll be able to unplug your factory ECU, mount the ECU underneath the passenger seat. You hit the key and you're up and running on a Holley EFI. I did a quick like alpha end tune, which is just throttle position, and plugged this in and had a car running in 5 minutes on a Holley. So no custom wiring. If people are like, oh yeah, that's really cool and everything, but if anyone's paid to have a car custom wired or wired like a custom car, especially a newer car, it's a lot of work, and your factory gauges might not work because they're controlled through the factory ECU, or the key switch might not work. We have a little box that converts to CAN data in the 0304 Mustang or 9904 Mustang. It converts to serial data to control the factory gauges. So your speedo works, all your factory gauges work, your key works like normal, but you've got a full standalone and it's plug and play. Looking to do F-body Camaro and Trans Am, and I'm also really we're doing a lot of research. We're trying to do a Hellcat and Mopar because Mopar brother, I think that would be pretty kick-ass. So I'm really trying to bring some. I don't say I'm trying, but I'm trying to help bring some really cool products to the market. So the 99 to 04 Mustang thing I think is gonna be pretty cool. And yes, you'll be able to then LS swap it, change some pins around, and make it all your factory gauge and everything work, air conditioning, everything work with an LS engine or any of the other type of you want to work. So.
You stock solid state relays?
I do have solid states in stock.
Brian said snacks for the
class. I always keep snacks in stock.
Are you going to do any advanced classes soon?
I think we're going to start. I'm going to start putting together a curriculum for advanced classes. They'll probably when the basic classes fizzle out, I'm going to start doing advanced ones. But it's been 2 years; they've already sold out pretty quick. This is the first time I've had 2 open spots for this long. It might just because I'm near the holidays. One open. I got one open spot. I only have 8. I got room for 8 people in my little conference room, and that's it. So I try not to make them too big where you can't get your questions answered, or we've all been to that stuff where there's 20 or 30 guys, and it's just like no one. You don't get what you want out of it because there's too many people, or you feel judged if you ask a stupid question. So.
Lorenzo's kind of fast, so if he endorses you, that's saying something for you guys that know Lorenzo. He's a little bit fast.
Lorenzo, let me say it's like he should be the like when it comes to asking for sponsorship or getting out there, you guys need to look at his program and see how he does it. It seems like everyone's always trying to get sponsorship or trying, you have to do something. And this is kind of going off the rails, but you have to do something incredible in order to deserve that, in my opinion. Like you have to go out, win some races, put the work in. And there's like a few guys that we work with that I'm like, man, really put the work. Lorenzo's one of them. And when he asks you for a sponsorship, he actually sends you out a proposal. He explains what you're going to get out of it because it is a business. Are you going to give some money out or a discount on parts or whatever you're trying to look for? He should put a class on about that, but before he ever asked for anything, he went out and did things. So I guess props to Lorenzo on that one. His car is fast and he does put the work in. And one thing that he doesn't do is complain. He doesn't complain and he doesn't point fingers when shit breaks because he understands that's how it's going to go. So big ups to the Lorenzo out there.
And quick side note, on January 30th, we have Jeff Lambert coming in to teach you guys all about how to get sponsorships. He has a book, and everything that Rick just said, 90% of it is.
Yeah, don't.
The quick and the short is don't act entitled, put the work in first, and then explain what the ROI is.
That's it.
But Jeff will tell you all the steps, the right way to do it. And
yeah, there is a science behind it, and I mean, I like it. Obviously, I'm just talking about Holley EFI and tuning and stuff like that. But I've been in the industry damn near 20 years now, and we've had a professional-ish business, since 2007. So I've fucked up everything and been fucked on everything. So he's not wrong. So yeah, but Lawrence, okay. you are annoying. No, I'm just kidding. But I've literally I've linked into Lorenzo's computer at 2 a.m. our time when he's in like Vegas making passes, living the dream pretty much. You know what I mean? I was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm tuning."
he puts in the work, man.
Yeah, he does.
Those guys, they're great.
So.
How can I get the schedule for the classes?
A friend requests me on Facebook, which is probably the easiest way because I just put them out on my personal page. I do them in the off season, so pretty much in the winter. And I have to wait till my wife gets her schedule because she has to work one Saturday a month normally, and I have to see what's and I got these kids that I got to watch and these dogs I got to take care of. So I figure out what Saturday that she's working, and then we plan around it. So it's kind of sort of last minute. I try to get them out a month ahead of time, but again, there's only 8 spots in them. So if you want to get on a future one, just shoot me a message, and I have a little list on my phone, and I'll say, hey, this is going to be the date, and I'll let you know before I post it.
Do you tune a lot of LS swapped Mopars?
Only one, and I put 3 extra degrees of timing in that bitch. Okay, no. I am so LS swap everything but Mopars. I am. I am like the most stubborn Mopar motherfucker you ever meet. Like, I have nothing but Dodges other than a smart car in my driveway. I've got a Challenger, a Charger, a Durango RT, my diesel Cummins Ram, a Dakota RT, my Plymouth Duster. Like, I've just all Mopar all the time.
Well, I'm going, brother. So Jeff Dean wants the other spot then.
Awesome. Just shoot me a message to get in, and then I'll send you my PayPal info.
Jeremy said do an advanced class. He'll bring his car out.
He's just trying to get that thing diagged.
He's working real hard on it. I mean,
he's working on all the angles.
Listen, hey, he's listening. He listened to your sponsorship speech, and he's showing you how he's going to put in all the work in advance right now on the live feed.
Yeah. You'll have to have James come on and tell stories about me.
Sometimes you gotta be the squeaky wheel though to get the results, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
No, you do. You do. So, but I love this shit, man. Like I still do this because I enjoy it. Actually, definitely not for the money. So, I honestly do enjoy helping people succeed. To the point where, like, if I'm helping guys at a race, I won't race my car. That's why I really don't do any of the dope preps, because I end up helping a lot of people there, and so I usually won't race my car if I'm helping tuning or helping other guys with their cars, because I won't have to put it on all y'all.
Sean says the only way Mopars are worth the shit is put LS in them.
Who says that?
Sean? Cadillac Sean?
Oh, he's so full of shit.
James said he's got you. That thing had you so mad you were stuttering.
Oh, he did. He got me so pissed off. He said James is our service manager, he's also an asshole. So he says, "Hey, this guy's bringing in this 68 Dart with an all swap for you to tune," and I'm not fucking doing it. I said, "I'm not doing it." I'm like, "What's his name?" He makes up some guy's name, and I look him up on Facebook and start talking shit to him. I'm like, "This guy's." Talking shit about his wife and yeah. He made it all up. I was hating on some guy that didn't even know. So
have you had a chance to play with the weather station sensor much, and your thoughts on electric wastegates?
So I have not played with the weather station. I'm actually going to buy one and put it in my car. I just think it's sweet to have it on your data log. I do
Which
know
one?
I was going to use a low dollar one. I do know that you have to like open your windows and clear the air out for it to be accurate. That if it gets real hot and muggy in your car, that the weather station, even though that's not technically what it is outside, is going to read that. And the electric wastegate thing, I haven't had a chance to really play with it to tell you, like, yeah, it's a benefit. I'm kind of like, it's really hard for me to go to the latest and greatest, newest thing sometimes, because I've been burned so many times by buying into the newest stuff. So I haven't got away from it yet, mostly because I haven't had a need where the CO2 wastegate situation hasn't worked out well, or I was like, man, this thing is not working like it should. Now, I might not know, or I might not have. I never had the experience with it, so maybe if I had a car come in with it, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's the greatest thing ever," I could see that it could be a programming nightmare, unless Holley's supposed to release a firmware that has all the PID tuning in the background. That's gonna have to make that thing work right, because there's a lot of work that goes into that, so things don't overshoot and undershoot and spike and things like that.
Not that I'm Rick, but I had a very long, which I annoy the shit out of Brandon sometimes with.
He's a good dude.
With a ridiculous. Oh, I love Brandon to death. I'm probably his Lorenzo, because I will ask him the most annoying questions. But he says the weather station's cool, but it's more of like a finite addition. It's not.
Yeah, like it's not.
You kind of don't really need it. It could be a little bit helpful.
Like, I don't think you're going to use the change your tune up based off of it, because the ECUs have barrel sensors in them and temperature enrichments and changes. And then by the time closed loose takes over, it doesn't. I would just like to see it when you go back to look at logs to see, hey, this car ran pretty fast. And look what the DA was. It's like kind of compare, tunes. But I don't think it's going to be a make or break you thing. But I that's where I see the benefit in that. If you have a $400 that you need to spend, that's not where you're going to spend the $400 on. I would spend your $400 on his on the laser ride height sensors. That's where I would spend that. Mostly because I supply everybody with them, but no, they're pretty sweet. I spent a week trying to find an affordable option of laser or wheelie sensors, what we refer to them as, and they do work pretty good, as long as the dickhead behind the keyboard setting it up right.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like those. Ride height sensors, game changer.
And Josh's shit's fast, so you have to listen to what he says.
I had no less in my dart before.
I'm glad you took it out because now we could still continue to be friends.
Mike needs a ride height sensor faux show.
In stock.
So, what else do we got, people? This man's got all this knowledge. Any other questions on converting from carb to EFI?
Yeah, we went a little off the rails on that one.
Yeah, but that's kind of what we do here. So, is there a benefit to a ride height with the Davis VPS?
I think it's more one or the other. Any data that the ride height's going to give you, the VPS should give you, or at least comparable what you're going to do with it. The VPS is another pretty sweet piece of equipment, but again, it's not a cheap piece of equipment. And I could tell you guys just from experience is that if you need to have your shit together before you start dumping money into that, these expensive pieces of equipment, whether it's the VPS or a crazy traction control unit or the next latest and greatest something or another. If you don't have your car figured out, or if you don't put the time in, buying a $10,000 or $5,000 $2,000 box isn't going to make it work. If you don't know how your suspension works or your chassis works, it's not going to work. It's not going to fix it. You might go down a track, but you're just going to go slow, so it's not hard to take power out of a car to make it go down any surface. It's hard to leave the power in the car and make it go down any surface. So once you get that close, then start looking at that stuff. But until Jasper shit's usually fast, from what I see on the interweb. So I'm not singling you out or anything like that, just in general, so don't take it like that. But, there's multiple tuners. There's a lot of good guys out here, and I'm not saying I'm the best, and I'm not saying I'm the end all be all. I, however, have a little bit of a different attitude when it comes to it. I don't try to hide things, or I think the industry works better if we share all of our information. Some guys don't think that. They think of their tune as their intellectual property, and they don't want to share any information. And I think that kind of stunts our growth a little bit. And so I'm also not afraid to admit I was wrong about something or I missed a mark on it. I just been doing this a long time. We've got a lot of experience so far. And for the most part, the stuff usually works. We have a good amount of success with it. So I guess the point is like, I'm never going to not tell you my thought on it. Sometimes I'll tell you what I think and also give you a reason why that might not work. Also try to give you all the information. I think when you're buying this stuff or if you're picking a tuner in the situation, you might want to build a relationship with them. Some tuners will come to the car, plug their laptop in, do whatever the fuck they do, and then walk away. Okay. So that may be what you want. And if that's what you want, most guys don't want that. Like I plug in the laptop, we pull a log, and if it's a remote session, it's going to be like, okay, this is what it's probably going to do. This is what it might do. This, I think we're going to put more power in at, the first 30 foot or whatever. What we're trying to do. We're going to discuss what's happening because you're driving the car. You should know your car more than ever. And maybe you might not know how to take what out of your mind and put it to the keyboard. And we're the link between that. Or maybe we're saying, hey, like, we need to work together on it, and I feel like when you're looking for someone that you're working with on a tuner, you need to have that relationship with them. Like when they plug into your car, I feel like they should tell you what they saw, hey, this thing knocked the tires off here. I think that we need to pull some power out here. Whatever the thing is, we need to have a conversation. That way, when you strap in and you let go of that button, you at least have some sort of an idea what the car might do, like to me, I if someone puts like a super spicy tune-up in the car and the track comes around and it wasn't there before, and all of a sudden this fucker's on the bumper because we missed a suspension change or we put too much power in it or whatever the reason is, and you're not expecting that could lead for disaster. If you're like, hey, this is a super spicy tune-up in it, if the track comes around, or you might want to check your shocks, like this thing could go in the air or might just knock the tires off. You know what to expect. So, you can prepare yourself a little bit, I guess, if that makes any sense. So I guess that's my little, like, when you're, I'm not saying you have to come to me. Like, it doesn't, there's a lot of talented guys around, and there's a lot of guys that don't know as much as me, and there's probably a ton of guys that know a shit ton more than me. But I would try to find someone that you could actually work with, conversate with, and have an open line of communication. Like, if they're gonna lock your tune out and don't let you see what's in your car, I don't think that is the right person. And that, again, that's my opinion. I don't have I have other guys at tune that I'll talk with and shoot ideas past, and I think that's good for the industry, because there's a shit ton of us out there, and there's plenty of work out there. You know what I mean? Most of us aren't begging for it. So that's my little, I guess, dialogue, or my little 2 cents of when you're picking a tuner or picking a guy to deal with. And if anytime, you should try to buy as much as you can from your tuner guy. Makes him happy to help you. So
I heard also pizza helps. Eric
Yeah,
said,
Eric is known.
assistance at the track. Pizza gets Rick to your car faster.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey Rick, I got pizza," and he's like, "Hey Rick, can you come look at my log?" And I was like, "I'll get there." And he's like, "Pizza," and I was like, "All right, I'll be right there."
Let's backtrack for 2 seconds. On the ride height sensor, what are the pros and cons on laser versus like a standard shock style sensor, like the one?
Well, so the shock
most
sensor, you
guys
only
wear?
know when the shock is maxed out. So the shock sensor, you should have both, really. So shock sensor tells you what your shocks are doing, for like at what rate do they extend and how long does it take them to move, right? So if you slow your extension down, they might extend over time, and then you can watch that work on the shock. Or if you hit the tire too hard and your shock maxes out, you see that. The laser ride height sensor is going to take over or give you data from when the wheel's in the air. So a lot of cars, they max the front suspension out and actually will dangle the front tire or start to come up in the air. A little bit of wheelie is not going to hurt you, right? So the laser sensor is telling you how far your wheels are off the ground, or your rocker bar, or wherever you want to measure from. So the shock sensor is dangling. So once the shock sensor is maxed out, it doesn't know if the tire's an inch off the ground, or 6 inches off the ground, or 3 feet off the ground. And that's where the laser ride height sensor is going to come into play. And all it is a simple, you wherever you mount it. What I do is I jack the car up, and I with limiters off and the shocks loose, wherever I want to see where the tire cracks, and then I start taking measurements from there. I jack the car up, all the sensor does is output voltage for height. So you might write down at 4 volts, it's cracked. At 6 volts, it's 6 inches. At 8 volts, it's 12 inches, and so on and so forth. And then you'll build a table in the background off of that. And then I usually do a timing retard. So I do a timing retard, and then I do over like a race time or time off the trans brake button. So might allow it to go up further right off the rip for the first 0.3, 0.4 seconds, and then we'll start pulling timing if it starts to go into a wheelie, climb the ring gear, get into a wheelie situation. And then you dial it in from that. So if your front end starts to go up, instead of letting out the throttle and slamming it down, we'll pull timing and gradually try and bring it down. There's a thought behind it, but if you get it up too far too fast before you pull timing, it's still going to hit the bumper. So you have to dial that in as well. And there is no set table that works on every single car for all this shit. You have to figure it out for your particular car. But that laser ride height sensor is pretty trick. If you look at the race pack one, it's the same exact one, except for it being a 0 to 5 volt sensor. It's a 0 to 10 volt sensor. One cool thing about the Holley HP and Dominator, not to turn it rack, but they'll take any type of sensor. So whether it's a thermistor, 0 to 10, 0 to 20, 0 to 15, 0 to whatever voltage, 0 to 5, it'll work off of. So you could take sensors from other industries, which is what that laser ride height sensor comes from, more for the they're used in warehouses and shit like that to see how far the boxes are away and whatever. And so it outputs a weird 0 to 10 volt, and we just set it up in that. A lot of other ECUs only use 0 to 5, like the Terminator X will only read a 0 to 5 volt sensor. So in that case, that laser ride height sensor wouldn't work at the Terminator X unless you use a step-down converter, which Mad Racing Parts sells, that converts it to a 0 to 5 volt, or you use it with the I/O box. But they're cool. They're cool, and they're $400 instead of $800 of what the race pack one is.
That's definitely cool.
Yeah.
Richard Draper on Facebook. Would you recommend a stealth setup on a stock 396 Chevy rather than going out and getting a new box distributor, better carb, and so on?
That's going to be a budget thing. It will, this Terminator Stealth, if you want, it's going to be $3,500 what it's going to cost you by the unit, the fuel tank, the fuel lines, and everything you need to do it right. It'll drive like a perfect carburetor every single time once it's tuned in and dialed in. If you're not ready to put that $3,500 or maybe even more into the car, just go buy a carburetor and live with carburetor stuff. But yes, I would. If the money's like, if it's like, okay, you're good with spending $35,000 or $4,000 and doing it right, not the way they advertise it as being bolt on and being $1,000 or $1,500, but buying the EFI style fuel tank, the right fuel filter, the right regulator, all the right stuff. If you're good with buying all that, it'll run like no carburetor will ever run, and it'll run like that every single day. But you have to be ready to invest that money. But if you're like anybody else, like the rest of us, like we'll just dump stupid money and then it's gone and we forget about it and it's whatever. You know what I mean? Like we've got 50, 60, 70. I don't even know how much money I got in my car over the last 22 years. Like every $2,000 I spent's forgotten about.
Like $1,500, $2,500 tops in my Blazer, man. Tops.
Yes, my wife is probably listening. Yes, it's only $500.
Yeah. Anybody else?
You guys sick of hearing me talk now? Come pay me $200 and listen to me talk for 10 hours. It's a good time.
Caught up. I think we finally caught up. There was a lot of questions in the beginning there. But I mean, we still have, 4 more of these. So you guys still have opportunities to come up with questions. Listen to this a couple of times if you need elaboration on something we've already talked about. Yeah, see, Eric says, wife stripe siding. Yeah. Josh is in on the advanced classes.
Yeah, I got
Josh, what's up, buddy? Red tie canopies in the house. Cadillac Sean is. So sounds like you might need to get those advanced classes.
Yeah, we will.
Out in 2023.
They will. Okay, once everyone takes the standard class, But it's a good time. I don't think anybody's taken the class has really been like, yeah. So it's a like I said, if you don't get anything out of it, I'll give you your money back. But we pretty much start from the beginning of how do you load a file, how do you save a file, how do you open a file, down to here's every function or every feature in it, and we kind of go into it a little bit. So
how hard is it to figure out if your computer's stupid?
If you're able to, the amount of computer knowledge that you need to be able to at least navigate it. Now I'm not talking about tuning. So there's two types of EFI guys out there. There's the guys that are going to tune it, do everything, understand the ins and outs of it. And then there's the guys that are going to have it, but need to know the basics. And when I mean the basics, you need to be able to pull up a data log, save a file, send it to your tuner, the guy that you're working with, so he can navigate and then fix things in it, right? Or program it. For the most part, 80% of guys, once it's tuned, it's ready to go, and it's a normal street car you're driving it. You're not racing it. It's whatever. You need to be the other guy. You need to, if you're going to get into EFI, you should be able to at least navigate a computer. And when I mean navigate a computer, if you could open up Word, type of a document out and hit save and email that, you should be able to do what we have to do, because that's about all it is. Or you can't do that. You could do a podcast, but you can't email a tune file. Like it's.
Listen, do you know how close doing a podcast is to Pornhub? Very close.
If you could get on Pornhub, and search your weird little shit, you know, you can search your midget weird porn or whatever you're into. You could save a file and send it to the guy. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
you just need, if you could get on Facebook and argue politics or talk shit to somebody or bully someone on the internet, you could do this. You don't have to know the ins and out. You just need to know how an engine operates.
Good. We can do all that stuff, CJ.
If you know the basics, like you know what rich and lean means, and you know what RPM is, and you know what air fuel ratio means, you shouldn't have any issues. Like you should be able to. I'm not saying that you could go in there and tune the car and make it idle and be perfect. Cadillac Sean is on OnlyFans, by the way.
I made a post about my cat this morning. She got fixed and her belly shaved, being on OnlyFans for being a shaved kitty. It's horrible. The stuff people let me post.
They'll kick you off the internet. They'll kick you off the Facebook again. Yeah, be careful. Actually, I think you're allowed to be a furry or something like that. The more weird you are, the less chance you have of getting kicked off.
I can go on for a while on that.
But yes, if you could do basics, if you get on this and post a comment, there's really no reason. You know, you got to click on a couple things. And I use a program called TeamViewer when I'm helping guys out. It's a free download. You give me an ID and a password, and then I take over your computer, and we do the things that way. So it's pretty kick-ass. But I recommend whoever, if you're dealing with somebody, if you're not the know-it-all, you should be, have a good rapport with the guy that you're working with, and be able to do the basics so he could help you, or she, or non-binary person could help you, or whatever that is. A chim,
Don't get me started, Rick. Ryan wants to know what's the basic class outline for the basic class.
So it's an overview. I call it more of a workshop. So we start off with how to save files, load files, email files, how to open data logs, save data logs, send data logs. And then we start from the front, like we're starting a new car. So we're going to build a tune, and I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to talk about, engine setup, and how this is what each thing means. This is why it's important to put the right engine size in, or this is why it's important. This is what the injector information is and why it's important, some tips and tricks around that. And then we go into setting up the fueling. And then I talk about the different load settings and what they mean. And then we go into ignition timing and how to set up the ignition timing, how to set up your crank trigger, how to set up. So we start off super basic, and then we hit everything in the software. Now, we do not go in depth into everything in the software. We hit on everything in the software, meaning this is the fueling, this is how it works, but we're not going to go into like, all right, when you're engine on an engine dyno and it's doing this, and I go into cylinder pressure and what it means, and ignition timing and what it means, but we don't go crazy in depth. This is meant for someone. The class I do is meant for a beginner or somebody that's coming from a carburetor to EFI, or coming from an OEM ECU to EFI, or just bought the system and they're like, what do I do with it? And at the end of the day, I want you to know what it can do. I want you to also be able to ask the right type of questions, meaning, hey, I have a stumble. I know it's an Excel enrichment issue. Now, you may not know how to tune the Excel enrichment issue, but at least you know that, hey, the stumble is probably caused by an Excel enrichment issue. Now you could ask educated questions that said, my car goes when I hit the throttle. When I hit the throttle. Like I want to teach you how to ask the right questions, and that way you could get the right answers. Does that make any sense? I hope that it's not
that's like perfect, because then you can have a dialogue with anybody who's familiar with
Right.
EFI
You
tuning.
don't have to, you're not going to know how to tune a car and be an expert. And I've had other guys take the class and go on and tune other people's cars and have success at it and get it. And I've had other people realize, like, hey, this isn't for me. I'm just going to pay you to do it. And at the end of the day, you still know how to, you're still going to learn how to save a file. You're still going to learn how to email it. We're still going to be able to have a dialogue of, hey, but you might look at all that software and be like, this is just too much for me. I'm good with working with you. But now I'm like, hey, can you send me a data log in your tune file? You'll know what I'm talking about instead of what? Who do what now? If at the end of it, and if you know nothing, right? Like, you don't, like, if you could open up your computer, download your tune file off the car, send an email, pull the data log from it, and send that in an email, I think it's worth the money. All right. And know, half the battle is knowing what the capability of the system is. Like if you're thinking about going from carb to EFI, and obviously we talked a little about it, and we can only go over so much in 2 hours. This is 8 hours of going over it and why it, like, where you're like, okay, it makes sense of why this little box is so magical, and what it can do, there's no purpose of having data if you can't do anything with it. Okay, like I guess there is purpose of having data if you can't do anything with it, but why, for the same amount of money, would you not have the data and then being able to do something with it? Like if your engine fucks up halfway down the track, instead of just watching it blow up, can we do anything to help minimize damage, or hurt it less? And this is where you run into having EFI over a carburetor, a grid, or 3 different setups, one box, and they have checks and balances, and everything talks to each other. The perfect example is having a blow through carburetor, a grid, and a boost controller. And the boost controller has an overboost protection, but it could only turn the boost back down. But what happens when the wastegate itself just sticks? It just blows up. So, having it all built into the ECU, the wastegate sticks. The ECU says, hey, too much boost, turn it down. Hey, that still didn't turn down. I'm going to cut the ignition, just shut it down. Right. And that's where having an all-in-one and everything that talks to each other is going to work out.
So we got two questions here. They're pretty much the same. What's the difference between Fuel Tech and Terminator X, and how does it compare to HP tune? And then somebody else asked, how does it compare to HP tuners? Probably.
So, I don't think Fuel Tech has a very basic ECU plug and play thing for Terminator X. There's nothing in Fuel Tech that you'll get up and running for $1,200 that I know of.
It's about like the HP, right?
But HP tuners is you using factory stuff. So, and that's gonna what you can do is going to vary from what ECU or what year the car is or what OS the factory used. So, things that the guys don't realize with HP tuners or just tuning OEM stuff, that it's hack software. Like you do not get any real information from the manufacturer or from HP tuners on what some of these tables means. And some of the tables sometimes are just not defined, meaning there's just a table with numbers in it. And whatever they figure out, or whatever they slave some money to an engineer, or however they get the software, like GM, Ford, they're not giving them the information on how their system works. It's all figured out backwards. Okay. So comparing a standalone or Holley to like HP tuners, it's tough because the factory ECU is not built around racing. It's built around emissions and drivability. So it's not going to have things like launch control, 2-step, boost control. Even most ECUs other than like Hellcats and like newer Fords don't even do closed loop fueling and wide open throttle. So it's whatever it is. It's all for emissions. So you get to a point where you run out of capabilities of a factory ECU. And where you start to struggle is if you're racing the car and you're trying to use it for power management. Like the really cool thing is, like, the Hellcats are super easy to make 1,200 horsepower with. We just had one with a pulley 85 and a porta blower make 950 to the wheels on a stock ECU. But you go to take that thing to the track and you have sub perfect prep. There's no way of trying to like easily go into a simple table and pull timing or pull boost from the launch. It's that the ECU is not built around that type of racing. So now you're trying to add extra boxes sometimes, or like on a 411, like a F body computer, you're adding a two-step rev limiter to build boost, but you don't have any boost build function with pulling timing or retarding timing to get the turbo to spool. Like you just get whatever the timing's at that part of the table and a two-step rev limiter on an external box. Again, the ECU doesn't know it's doing that, so it's doing other stupid shit to try and combat that. It's just not designed. Aftermarket standalones are designed for you to be able to have full control without any secrets, you know what I mean? Without any hacked software, and giving you the tools that you need to get the car to go down the track in a racing environment, and they also do good drivability and all the other fun stuff like that. So
plays well with others. Ryan, are your classes built off of someone bringing their laptop and following along?
Yes, actually, I when we talk about and if you go to my personal page, there's like a little like rundown of what they expect. But yes, bring your laptop and notebook to take notes, and it's best if you're just going along. I have like a 60-inch TV that the laptop's like broadcasted on, and then my laptop's up, and I go along with it, and I have an ECU plugged in on the bench, and I've got sensors that we could wire in so you could see them work, all on my bench, and then if you follow along on your ECU, so you could kind of do example inputs and outputs and things like that. So definitely.
Sweet. Well, all right, guys. You guys have asked 2 hours worth of questions, and I think we're going to give Rick's brain a rest.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess let me answer that last question.
Yeah.
It's right. Actually a good one.
Mark's the last one. We're ignoring the rest of
it. So the Holley self-learn, okay? It's always beneficial to have the car tuned, okay? And it's kind of a marketing gimmick, and again, I do a lot of Holley EFI tuning. I like their system, but the whole self-tuning thing is kind of bullshit. Now it has a feature in it that they call it a learn table, where it takes the fuel correction. So, in layman's term, you tell it how much fuel to give it. It reads, you tell it what your air fuel ratio you want it to be. And then it puts the fuel, it reads the O2 sensor, and then how wrong you are. So if you told it to give it too much fuel, it pulls fuel out. If you didn't tell it to give it enough fuel, it adds fuel. Okay. Well, it takes those corrections and it puts it into another table that you could simply just hit transfer to learn, and it'll take those corrections that the O2 sensor made and take it and make all the corrections for you in the main fuel table. So you don't have to go through and manually change all your fueling numbers. That is the self-tuning or self-learning. Now, it does not tune out stumbles. It doesn't set premium ignition timing. It doesn't set up inputs and outputs for it. There's so much more to tuning the car or getting it up and running than just making the fueling right. Now, I can tell you that most basic combos, I've had 1,500 horsepower cars on and off the dyno from first startup to ready to go to the track in 2 hours. If everything works and everything's right, that learn feature does cut down on the amount of time it takes to tune a car by a lot. But you also using it, you need to read, there's other tips and tricks to make it go faster, get it to learn. But the learn table is a feature that Holley has that works better than most other ECUs that I think works better, that will help it dial itself in when it comes to fueling, but it won't fix all your other problems. You ever hear the term garbage in, garbage out? Well, it's the same thing with ECU tuning. So there's a ton of benefits from actually getting it custom tuned versus just letting it answering the questions on the little handheld and getting it up and running. So, yes, you still would want it tuned. However, it shouldn't be an all day ordeal on the dyno. It's usually a couple hours on something like that, as long as your car's ready. So half the cars that come into the dyno aren't ready for the dyno. I had a car come in the other day with the ignition wires bolted together. That's how they made their connections. They bolted them all together and didn't even put any tape around it. Just hanging out, bolted together. So
don't judge me.
You got all your power just a nut and bolt and through the eyelets?
Oh no, I didn't use eyelets. I just wrapped the wires around the bolt with 2 washers and squished them together.
Oh, that's
should have used eyelets.
Completely Yeah, that's good. That's good. Make sure it taps ground too. Make sure good sparks.
I like the sparks. I like the
So,
pretty lights. So, all right, everyone.
yes, feel free. Shoot me a friend request if you have any questions about the class coming up. I do offer remote tuning. I don't like advertise it a whole lot because I stay pretty busy with it, but we have options for that where we could get on the internet and I could link into your stuff and set up a tune and do some online diagnostic if your car isn't running. A lot of time it's just, hey, like this isn't working and we need to figure it out. But I do offer that as a service, and I like, again, I don't try to. I'm not crazy. I don't feel that I'm crazy expensive. I feel like I'm pretty fair on that. So cool.
It's a good deal, everyone. Rick will be back January 23rd for the next installment. So make sure you go to our events page and set your reminder. I just click reminder for all of them. We got a lot of great stuff coming up. We got stuff on next week's the promoters roundtable, and if you want to hear me rake all these crybaby ass promoters over the coals for whatever, tomorrow will be or next Monday will be a good one to tune in on. It's going to get pretty rowdy. I got a lot of rowdy friends coming in with me on that one. And we got we got a lot of great shops. Bipolar up in Michigan, another great shop. Extreme Automatics right here in Ohio builds some of the baddest transmissions out there. Then Rick will be back. And then, like I said, Jeff Lambert will be here on the 30th. Teach you guys about sponsorships. I also have another guy, Alex, who in Marchish. He's more geared towards corporate sponsorships. So, it'll kind of be two different perspectives on the same thing. But we got all kinds of stuff. 10 Soldiers, Tony McKinney, Dynacom, Dynamometers. How do you say that, right? Probably. Me too. The IHRA. God, you guys are ready. That's out of all of these I put together, that's the one you guys are most interested in. It looks like poor Chris. I feel bad from Chris from the IHRA. We got Michael Furick from Furick Welding coming. So we got a lot of great people teach you a lot of great things, man. Help your race program out. So tune in next Monday. We're gonna have a lot of fun. And like I said, Rick will be back on January 23rd. And look for some updates. Maybe I'll do a quick video or something if he doesn't mind on the 14th, and give you guys some non-proprietary behind the scenes info on what his classes are about. So everybody have a great week. Have a safe and happy New Year, and stay out of trouble, people. God, I can't believe how many of you fuckers got banned over the last few days. Horrible. Behave. We'll talk to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.